Jeff Gonzalez, Assemblymember. We are at Brickhouse Coffee in Imperial. Let's talk about wrapping up your first term. What would you say has been the biggest accomplishment of your first term in the Assembly?
Yeah, you know, the biggest accomplishment I would say is I ran this so that way I can fight for my son with special needs. And when we heard that the governor was going to cut $700 million from in-home supportive services, I knew I was here at the right time, at the right place to fulfill what I had been talking about. And we fought and we made sure to talk to everybody across the aisle and talk about how important it is to not cut $700 million. And we had a press conference on the steps, and because of our pressure and our commitment to not only our community but to my family, we were able to save $700 million from being cut from in-home supportive service. So that's, I think, to me personally, that's the greatest victory, is to be able to say that this is what we ran on and we were able to fight and win. So it was great.
Fantastic. Looking back, is there anything that you would have approached differently?
You know, I went to Sacramento with some, I guess, preconceived notions, right? You get everyone telling you about all the different things about Sacramento from all sides, right? I had the opportunity to speak with Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas, and I'm thankful for my conversations with him. Because of those conversations, I was able to be selected as the Vice Chair of Water Parks and Wildlife, and of course Vice Chair of Military and Veterans Affairs. So approaching Sacramento, hearing what everyone is saying, I probably would have approached it in a different way, in that I would have had more conversations. And by the way, I had a lot of conversations, but just more conversations, get more information so I can understand everyone's perspective, to include my colleagues from across the aisle. But now that I did that, I'm thankful that it panned out. Because of my conversations, we were able to get 140 bipartisan pieces of legislation co-authored with my colleagues across the aisle. So it started off slow, but in the end, it was a victory.
Were there any pieces of legislation or policies or bills that you championed that maybe didn't get passed that you would have liked to have?
Sure. I mean, there was several pieces of legislation that didn't get passed. One of them specifically was AB 1016. You know, we've parked it. We put it on. We put it in the corner. Made it a 2-year bill. AB 1016 was the geothermal bill for permitting, to raise the permitting level, to bring it to the local level. Although we have it as a 2-year bill, we've also come to find out recently that there's some provisions that allow us, and we call it the 1978 provision, that allow us to find a new way of doing it. It didn't get passed, but that's okay. Another piece was the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. We brought Coachella Valley Unified School District to Sacramento because folks in the district wanted us to hold them accountable, and we did that. We brought them there. Unfortunately, Senator Steve Padilla worked behind the scenes to stop that from happening and basically stop the voice of the people. And you know, they're touting that there is a what we call a FICMAT review. All it is a review. They've had plenty of reviews. What we need is an audit, and that's what I was asking for, and it's unfortunate that he chose to do that behind the scenes versus listening to his constituents.
So what did you learn about, you know, getting bipartisan support for your bills? It's easy to get people on your own side, right? But what did you learn about approaching people who may not see eye to eye with you and talking to them about why these bills are important? What was your lesson there?
You know, in Sacramento, everything, and I think in any organization, everything is about relationships, right? And I spent the year building relationships across the aisle, and the result of building those relationships was 140 pieces of legislation that were co-authored, me getting being part of the Problem Solvers Caucus. So what I learned was relationships in Sacramento and listening to the other side is very important. So people think that just because you're of one party or the other, that there is this wall that divides you. But I would push back against that and say, people want there to be a wall, but if you are willing to take time and listen, you can actually build bridges. And that's what I did. I built bridges, and because of that, 140 pieces of legislation, which is huge. And we were able also to assist in writing letters of support for dollars to come back to the district. And we have hundreds of thousands of dollars that came back to the district in the form of IID, Caltrans, cities, across the board. Hundreds of thousands of dollars came back. People thought that wouldn't happen, but it did. It happened, and it happened in droves.
You did kind of touch on that. I was going to ask you how much money you brought into the Valley in terms of securing state funding, investments.
It was nearly
State funding, investments, infrastructure, and budget allocations.
Yeah, I was just talking to my chief of staff, but it was nearly $12 million awarded from the state back here. And here's the thing that people need to understand. As state agencies, we all work together to make all of this happen, whether it be in legislative support, whether it be in relationships, whether it be us having conversations in committees. So collaboratively, a lot of money came back to the district. And I'm thankful for my partners in Caltrans. I'm thankful for my city partners, from Bali to Calexico to Holtville to everyone in between. They asked for things to take place, and the state came back and answered.
What kind of feedback have you received from constituents here in the Imperial Valley during your term?
I think the greatest feedback was accessibility. They've never seen a legislator just be present. We're here in a coffee shop. This is, kind of who I am. I'm just Jeff, trying to meet people, trying to listen, and they've never had that from the corners of each part of the district. That's what I keep on hearing, and we hear it consistently. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for having a conversation on my front porch, or in the park, or wherever it is. So I'm thankful that I was able to do that and continue to do that.
So how have you, because you're in Sacramento, but you're also here a lot, Jeff. You're here like every week. So how have you balanced, your statewide priorities with the unique needs of people in Imperial County?
It's a interesting challenge and balance. I'm thankful that I have a great team that is around, in every corner, doing the work. But at the same token, trying to balance, I'm in Sacramento Monday through Thursday, so I'm back here, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. I'm trying to be present. I'm trying to earn the trust of our constituents and the trust that they deserve, and the level of connection that they deserve. So it's a unique balance, but I'm also thankful for a great wife who also says, go do that, go fight for our community, go fight for our son. So yes, it's challenging, but I have a great team, I have a great wife, and we understand the need. And this region has been neglected for far too long, but it won't be like that anymore, not under my watch.
You just said you felt like you have this need to come and change and to speak up for people here, and there's been a lot of discourse online about people's callings and their callings from God. Do you kind of feel that you were called to this work?
Yeah, from 21 years in the Marine Corps, it's a life of service, to then being a pastor, again, life of service. I guess God just built me that way, right? To be a servant and be a servant leader. So I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm called to serve. I'm called to be a servant. That's what I would say is the highest title that I can ever have. Is a servant, not only for my faith and for God, but for my community and my family.
Now, there have been some debates and definitely a need for things like public housing, public safety, infrastructure, the school system out here. How did you navigate those challenges? How did you see what how to prioritize those.
You know, I talk about this quite a bit, and I just had a meeting about this morning, and talking about the state budget. But it's obvious with a $12 billion deficit that was projected nearly 2 decades ago. We've been here at the state. They've been running their finances the wrong way. We're also projected to have a deficit in the billions for the next several years. So weighing needs and wants is a challenge because it's emotional also, right? We have to look at this and say, what's the best thing for our community? And sometimes that doesn't make people happy, right? So what we've done, and we're doing it today and we'll be doing it for the next 3.5 months, we're meeting with every single public safety department, every single city, counties across the entire district, and asking them, what is it that you need from a budget perspective, and what is it that you need from a legislative perspective? So that way we can walk into this second year with, if you will, the stack full of requests, so we can go fight for our community.
What do you see as the biggest issues? What goals are you setting for the second year?
The goals that I'm setting for the second year is I believe is very clear. Number one, prioritizing the requests from the ground up, right? Because if it's not coming from a community, then that means I'm not hearing from them. So priority number one is meeting with everyone and then getting those priorities in order. So we're in the middle of that process, right? The second piece of that is making sure that the money that has been asked for in the past gets here. It's going to be a challenge. It's obvious with a $12 billion budget. That's going to be probably the greatest challenge. But I think most importantly, the greatest goal and priority is to remain available for the community and just tell them the truth of where we're at, what we can do, and how we can work together.
There are a couple of issues that have come up that I have been talking to people about this week specifically, and I spoke to just yesterday 2 business owners. One of them, their main client was Spreckles Sugar. They just lost a huge, and they're preparing to sell to San Diego, to a company in San Diego. Their company that's been here since 1958 is going to San Diego's hands, okay? And another one was saying that they're having trouble because of all the increase in prices of things with their coffee and beans from Mexico, that they might have to raise their prices. As you know, Imperial County just declared a state of economic emergency due to Spreckles. And I know you fought hard, Jeff. I saw you out there fighting.
I did.
What's your plan to tackle this and to get it,
Yeah,
under control?
it's a multifaceted plan. One that I've been talking to the county about and the cities about for quite some time. When I've just been here a year, right? This problem has been brewing for long before I got here. But as soon as I got here, I immediately started having conversations and saying, what can we do to work together to make sure that this gem of an area in Imperial County is looked after, it's taken care of, and we're talking about it. So one of the first pieces is lithium. And there's been some legislation that we just talked about, making sure that happens. Unfortunately, there's litigation, continuous litigation that's going on. Look, we need to tackle this. Here's the reality about this. I get that there are opposing sides to this, but when we are fighting this issue internally, nobody wins. That means this 20% unemployment rate will continue, and it will get higher and higher. So we need to come to a solution, and it needs to come fast, and it needs to come from the community, because right now this infighting is causing businesses to say, we don't want to be here.
Yeah.
We can't have that. So we need to solve that issue. That's primary, because if Lithium Valley becomes a reality, and we really want it to become a reality, then the secondary and tertiary businesses then come in, and then that's more money for this region. So we need this to work so that it sparks innovation, it sparks business, it sparks revenue, all of those things, and more importantly, it sparks jobs, and it helps the infrastructure and the revenue model for this region. If this dies on the vine, then we have a long road and a big hill to climb. So that's really the first thing that we need to get past is the litigation and the lithium issue, so that we can get to a better place in this county.
The other issue that I think I'm getting ready to publish, and I spoke to the secretary at DHS, Department of Homeland Security, up there, and spoke to Senator Suzak, she's great, is these two new bills that passed the Assembly and the Senate, which is SB 627 and SB 805, the No Vigilantes Act, and the No Secret Police Act, which would prohibit any law enforcement in the state, even federal, it would ban them from covering their faces, and also they have to identify themselves by name and badge number. Now, proponents say this is good, we need accountability and transparency. There have been 3 articles that I've done about people posing as ICE and kidnapping women, but on the other hand, it's setting up these law enforcement, especially CBP, ICE, whatever it is. Of course, for doxing, harassment, threats, we've seen a lot of that this week, Jeff. We've seen a lot of that. It's saying it's going to endanger these families, not just the law enforcement agencies, but their children, their wives, their home, right? So what do you feel about this? How did you vote, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, one of the things that I saw in this bill and the rhetoric that accompanied it is they were, and I spoke to it on the floor, trying to make our law enforcement, our men and women, look bad. They call them evil thugs. I mean, these are folks that live here in Imperial County, calling them masked thugs. They're not masked thugs. These are community members. We love them, right? And I spoke about the rhetoric that's being used in Sacramento and in DC and across the nation about how we are demonizing the men and women that work here. The men and women that are, by the way, Latino. They're from all walks of life, right? But they live here in our community, and I am against that type of rhetoric. And as a matter of fact, I said we need to stop talking about the men and women like that work for these law enforcement agencies, because they protect us. They work on the front line for us. So I talked about that. I talked about my vote, that I was against this because we're trying to impose state rules on a federal agency. It doesn't work like that, right? But I'm in another respect, I'm thankful that I'm in the position that I'm in because of all this that's going on. I was asked to join the Problem Solvers Caucus. And in that, we talked about immigration reform. We talked about all these different issues. And by the way, the Problem Solvers Caucus is 13 Democrats and 13 Republicans that come together in a bipartisan, bicameral way to say, how can we come to a solution, right? And we came up with 2 big key points with respect to the immigration issue. And one is safety. We don't want rapists and murderers on our streets, right? Nobody wants that. But we also talked about empathy. There's people that have been here that have been living good lives that are undocumented, and how do we take care of them? And just so we're clear, the state government has no jurisdiction over federal government. Period. It just doesn't work that way, right? So people tell me, hey, you need to fix this. I was like, but I have no jurisdiction over it, right? So we came up with these 5 pillars, and we presented these pillars to our federal Problem Solvers Caucus, so that way they can come up with legislation that can be look at both safety and empathy at the same time. So we know that immigration is broken. Everybody knows that. Republicans, Democrats, and everyone in between, and it's been broken for a long time. So we're hoping that not only the words and the pillars that we came up with will fix this, but it will help bring down the tone and protect the community and our law enforcement officers.
All right, finally, Jeff, what do you want to tell your constituents? What do you want to say to the people of the Valley as you wrap up this first term? What are your parting words? What are you going to continue? What do you want to see from us? Because it's, it takes a village, right?
Right.
So what's your message to them?
Yeah, my message is we need to come together as a community to help improve our community, right? Not only with the jobs, the homelessness, the hunger, but the rhetoric. We need to be united, right? We need to turn down the temperature and find ways where we can agree to disagree civilly. That's what this is about. Have discourse, but in a respectful way. We can disagree and agree on many different things, but we can come together for our community, and that's what I'm looking for in this next year, is to be a leader in coming together.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.